Red alert. All crew to battle stations. I repeat, all crew to battle stations. Program execution failed. Shutdown.
No! Captain! Our ionic multi-phase coils are overheating. Decks 13 through 27 are facing imminent life support failures. If we don't take evasive action soon, sir, we may be facing a total reactor meltdown.
That's bad. Right? I hope they have insurance. Oh, that was a rough start. Anyways, hi guys, I'm Emma and welcome back to Write On. Today we're going to be talking about Technobabble and what goes into writing it successfully. Technobabble is exactly what it sounds like. It's doctors telling an assistant they need 6 cc's of a non-existent drug, or a starship captain commanding the crew to pilot the ship at warp speed, or someone frantically trying to reverse the polarity of some critical piece of tech to save the day. Essentially, it's a whole bunch of scientific-sounding dialogue that amounts to a whole lot of nonsense, realistically speaking. But that's the beauty of Technobabble. It isn't meant to be entirely realistic. Technobabble is a way of disguising the function of real-life tech, allowing writers to broaden the capability of existing technology to meet their story's needs. It allows cars to fly, makes medicine more effective, and allows for travel through time and deep space. Technobabble relies heavily on the reader's willingness to suspend their disbelief. In some cases, that's what makes or breaks the reader's immersion. It's because of this that the use of Technobabble is heavily criticized. For the most part, it's a necessary part of world building in science fiction stories, but it can also be seen as an easy way to fill an otherwise unfillable plot hole, or can be used as a Deus Ex Machina. Deus Ex Machina is a Latin term for a literary technique used in storytelling that translates loosely to God from the machine. Encyclopedia Britannica defines this technique as, quote, a person or thing that appears or is introduced into a situation suddenly and unexpectedly, and provides an artificial or contrived solution to an apparently insoluble difficulty. While the use of a Deus Ex Machina can often create thematically relevant or comedic moments within a story, it has been notoriously used in science fiction as an easy way out in sticky situations. It can be disappointing for a reader to invest time into a plot with rising tension that's then too conveniently resolved by technology, and this is arguably one of the downfalls of Technobabble. Regardless of these concerns, the use of Technobabble is pretty much unavoidable. At some point in any sci-fi story, readers need to be given some sort of explanation for how the technology within the world functions. This is not only to satiate their curiosity, but also to provide intriguing details that help overall to flesh out the world that you've built for them. So how does one strike that balance between believability and doubt? Before we get into that, we have to choose what type of story we're writing. While Technobabble can be found in many genres, including medical, crime, and military stories, it often goes hand in hand with science fiction. Beneath the umbrella term sci-fi that contains the various branches of the genre lie two main subgenres: hard and soft science fiction. Hard science fiction focuses more on scientific accuracy and logic. It avoids the super fantastical in favor of sticking to the rules of the known universe within the book and doesn't dramatically break or bend those rules. Books like Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park and Andy Weir's The Martian fit well into this category. In hard science fictions, the main plot is often based in actual science and can often be limited technologically by the era in which it was written. Soft science fiction, on the other hand, is less rigid in its need to adhere to scientific fact. Many stories in this subgenre focus on character-driven stories or social sciences like anthropology, sociology, psychology, etc. These stories focus more on hypothetical societal advancements and less on hypothetical advancements in engineering or science. These stories can be more fantastical, like Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or even political or dystopian, like Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games. Both subgenres use Technobabble in their own ways, though with varying levels of scientific focus. A soft sci-fi story may have some sort of heavy-handed mystical device, say a flux capacitor, which really has no scientific basis other than it runs on plutonium and makes time travel possible, while a hard sci-fi story like that of The Martian may have Technobabble that is so well-researched and plausible that it's hardly distinguishable from fact, despite being fiction. So our first question is, do you want to create a narrative structured more around fantastical technology, or are you interested in creating something more realistic? Defining the subgenre you're writing in is a great first step towards understanding what sort of technobabble you're going to use in your story. But how do we write it? The first thing we have to do is brainstorm. In order to write convincing technobabble, you first have to figure out what sort of technology you're going to write about. This is where the location and time period of your story are crucial. For example, your story could take place in the late 1700s on a moon colony built by the French, or on Earth in the distant future after some sort of global disaster. These details will not only help you with world building, but will also help you determine what sort of materials, resources, and pre-existing tech are available to your characters. Imagine what a rocket built in the 1700s would be made of, or what sort of remnant materials homes would be built out of years after total global disaster. Details like the location and date give you tons of creative possibilities, but also realistic limitations if you choose to abide by them. In Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there is an actual fictional Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy mentioned throughout the story. There are several excerpts from the guide spread throughout the book that give funny encyclopedic information about relevant items, places, historical events, etc. In one of the first excerpts from Adams's book, for example, the guide mentions that the best drink in the universe is called the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster. The effect of the drink is, and I quote, like having your brains smashed out by a slice of lemon wrapped around a large gold brick. And the final instruction in making one is, quote, drink, but very carefully. I think I'm gonna pass this time, but here's the recipe if you're interested. I don't think you're going to find any of the ingredients in your local grocery store, but you can try. Let me know if you do. While most of these excerpts from the book aren't based on real-life events or time periods, they act as a way of defining the events and time periods that take place within the universe of the story being written, making it easy and entertaining for the reader to connect with the world they're unfamiliar with. In the case of The Hitchhiker's Guide, these defining technological and historical details serve to help world building within the story, and their randomness and irreverence set the tone for the novel as a whole. Once you have the basis for some of your tech, it becomes easier to imagine how people in your world will interact with it and talk about it. Think about what sort of tech people are exposed to on a daily basis, and how common certain items are. For instance, do the people of 1700s France gossip about who's wearing the most expensive Rococo spacesuit? Are rockets easy to come by? Or are they reserved for the aristocratic, who are looking for a quick getaway from a certain guillotine? Ask yourself, are people afraid of this technology? Or is all of this normal to them? Answering questions like these will help you decide what amount of technobabble will be integrated into your story and how frequently it comes up in dialogue. With this in mind, it's time to research. Look into the concepts surrounding the technology you want to focus on. You should get familiar with the real-life terminology, but also familiarize yourself with how the actual technology works. For instance, if you're writing a story that takes place on the moon, knowing how physics and gravity work could help you immensely in determining how your structures are built and how your characters are going to get from place to place. And also how it feels to just float around. It's a good detail to have. Researching the kinds of technology that are available in the time period you're focusing on will ground your work. This not only makes it more authentic, but also gives readers the chance to connect with technology they're already familiar with, and by extension, get them excited about the new tech that you're presenting them. Andy Weir's The Martian is a perfect example of combining science fiction with thorough research and creating impressively realistic technobabble. Many of the techniques that the main character, Mark Watney, uses to survive life stranded on Mars are based on real-life technologies and protocols that have been developed over the years by NASA. Even Watney's method of water recovery is accurate and reflects real-life NASA protocols. On the International Space Station, no drop of water is wasted. Every drop is recycled. And I mean every drop. Yeah. Think about that one for a minute. The technobabble within the story is so well researched and integrated that readers are able to fully suspend their disbelief. They're able to become fully immersed in this reality that has been presented to them because they're a little familiar with the technology being used to create it. At that point, it feels less like babble and more like real tech. Because some of it is. The Martian is a shining example of real-life technology seamlessly melding with science fiction. But that doesn't mean your story has to follow the rigid guidelines of real-life tech in order to be interesting or immersive. Instead, it means that with thorough research comes confidence, and with confidence comes consistency, which happens to be the next tip on our list. Once you have your world and technology laid out, it's important to stick to it in order to keep your story immersive. This can be done by taking note of small details that you've established. For example, if you say your character is holding a plasma-powered bubble converter, make sure they aren't holding a bubble-powered plasma converter the next time you mention it. Keeping a comprehensive list of the tech you use in your story is one way to avoid confusion like that. Make sure you know what your tech is called and how it functions, even if you're not revealing everything to the reader. More likely than not, if you're confused, then your reader definitely will be. Another important part of writing Technobabble is making sure that it's not overbearing. While it's a great way to convey detail to your reader, you should be wary of exactly how much you're explaining to them. Over-explanation is a common mistake when it comes to science fiction writing, and your tech can run the risk of being over-explained in moments where it's unnecessary. Let's picture the simple action of turning on a computer. If I wrote, Emma pressed the computer's onboard power switch and 1.21 gigawatts of electricity surged through its wires, the computer's prefrontal terminal humming to life. In a moment where I could have very simply instead written, Emma turned on the computer, and its fan began to whir, I would run the risk of both A, alienating my readers with sparkly science jargon, and B, using sparkly science jargon while simultaneously outing myself as someone who has no idea how a computer works. In this case, being vague has its advantages. Your reader doesn't have to know exactly how something works at any given moment, and sometimes it's best to let them fill in the gaps themselves. You can instead try to describe from your character's perspective what they're noticing about the tech, not necessarily each process that it's going through in order to get from point A to point B. Sometimes a lengthy explanation is better left unwritten, and swapping out a lengthy piece of passive dialogue about how your character emptied the malfunctioning quantum charge chamber in order to boost the lithium pulse cannon's efficiency for a simple, I fixed it, might be well worth it. Writing convincing technobabble can be tricky, and it's difficult to bridge the distance between fantastic and realistic in such a way that helps rather than hinders your story. But with well-conducted research, consistency, and confidence, you too may reach the stars. Thanks for watching! If you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. We've got some really cool stuff on the horizon. See you next time!